The sun burned across the wasteland with no mercy. The ground was cracked and dry, and nothing grew except thin weeds that clung to life. Wind carried dust through the air, filling the sky with a red haze. In the middle of this empty land walked a young man named Ryan. He had no home, no village, no family left. Only his will to survive kept him moving. Long ago this world had been alive with forests, rivers, and skies full of birds. But that was before the great disaster. Now it was only bones and silence. The bones were everywhere. They lay half buried in the sand, bleached white by the sun, massive and twisted into strange shapes. Some looked like the skeletons of giant beasts, others like machines that had once lived but now lay still. Ryan did not know their history, but he had learned one thing: the bones were not useless. He bent down near a pile of ribbed bones taller than him. With both hands he pulled one free from the sand. It was heavy but strong, harder than stone. He had nothing else to use, so he began to shape it with a sharp rock. Slowly, over days, he scraped and chipped the bone into a long point. His hands bled from the work, but he did not stop. By the time the sun fell behind the dunes, he had created his first tool, a spear of bone. The edge was not perfect, but it was sharp enough to pierce the hide of a desert lizard. That night, when he hunted one near his fire, the spear struck true. Ryan cooked the meat and ate in silence, staring at the glow of the flames. For the first time in weeks, his stomach was full. Still, the emptiness around him pressed heavy on his heart. He wondered if any other humans had survived. He had not seen another face in years. Sometimes, in the distance, he thought he heard voices carried by the wind. But when he searched, there was nothing but sand and bones. The next day he climbed the highest dune he could find. From there he saw the desert stretch to the horizon, endless and lifeless. But far away, he saw something strange. A long line of smoke rose into the sky. It was not a natural fire. Something had fallen from the stars. Ryan felt both fear and hope. If it was a ship, it might hold supplies, or even other survivors. He began to walk toward the smoke. His feet sank into the sand, his lips cracked from thirst, but he did not stop. Hours later, when the sun dipped low, he reached the crash site. A broken craft lay half buried in the sand, flames still burning along its side. Its metal was twisted, its wings torn apart. Ryan crouched low, spear ready in his hand. He moved carefully, circling the wreck. Then he heard it. A sound, faint but clear, a cry for help. It was not human. The voice was softer, higher, filled with pain. Ryan stepped closer and saw movement among the broken metal. A figure was trapped beneath the wreckage. Its skin was pale blue, its eyes wide and glowing faintly in the dim light. It was an alien, injured and struggling to move. For a moment Ryan froze. He had heard stories of aliens when he was a child, tales of wars and invasions. He did not know if this one was friend or enemy. But the voice was weak, desperate. Ryan lowered his spear. He dropped to his knees and pulled away the sharp pieces of metal. It took all his strength, but at last he freed the alien. The figure gasped for air and looked at him with both fear and confusion. "Human," the alien whispered. The word was heavy, as if carrying old memory. Ryan nodded. He offered water from his flask. The alien hesitated, then drank slowly. Its hands trembled, but strength began to return to its body. "My name is Ryan," he said simply. "Who are you?" The alien's voice was faint. "Myra," she answered. That night, Ryan built a fire near the wreck. Myra sat close, her body wrapped in torn cloth from the ship. She watched as Ryan cooked the lizard meat over the flames. When he handed her some, she looked uncertain, but hunger forced her to take it. Her eyes fell on the spear beside him. "Bone," she said with surprise. "You use bones as weapons." Ryan nodded. It is all I have. Myra gave a small laugh, though her voice was weak. Your kind never changes. Always finding strength in what others see as broken. Ryan did not understand her words, but he kept quiet. He only stared into the fire, the bone spear across his knees. When the night deepened, sounds came from the darkness. Shadows moved across the sand. Predators. Their eyes glowed in the firelight as they crept closer, low to the ground. Myra tried to rise, but her body was too weak. Ryan stood, spear in hand. He faced the beasts as they circled. With a cry, one leapt forward. Ryan thrust the bone weapon into its chest. The creature fell, writhing in pain. Another lunged from the side, but Ryan spun, striking it down with all his strength. Blood stained the sand. The remaining beasts hissed, then slipped back into the darkness, afraid of the sharp white spear. Ryan stood breathing hard, the firelight shining on his face. Myra looked at him with wide eyes. Her advanced ship had fallen, her tools broken, yet this human had defended them with nothing but bone and fire. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "No wonder the galaxy once feared you." Ryan did not answer. He sat by the fire again, his hand resting on the weapon he had made. The desert was still dangerous, the world still broken, but something inside him had changed. For the first time, he felt more than survival. He felt the beginning of power. The desert was quiet in the morning. Smoke still rose from the broken ship, and the wind carried the smell of burned metal. Ryan sat near the fire, sharpening his bone spear with the rock. Across from him, the alien girl, Myra, rested against a piece of the wreck. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes glowed faintly like stars in water. She looked tired but alert, watching him closely. Ryan had given her food and water, but he kept his distance. He did not know if she was a danger. She, too, seemed unsure of him. Every time he moved suddenly, she tensed as if ready to defend herself. When the sun rose higher, Myra spoke for the first time since the night. "You are alone." Ryan looked up. "Yes. No people left, only me." She studied him in silence. Then she said, "Strange. Humans always travel together. They fight, but they stand as one. Why are you here alone?" Ryan's jaw tightened. He did not like to speak of the past. "The world ended," he said simply. "Storms came, water dried, cities fell. People died. I walked. Now I survive." Myra lowered her gaze. She understood loss, even if her story was different. The day grew hot, and the air shimmered above the sand. Myra tried to stand, but her legs shook. She leaned against the wreck, breathing hard. Ryan moved to help, but she raised her hand. "I can walk," she said stubbornly. "I am not weak." Ryan respected her will. He only nodded and stepped back. Still, he saw her weakness. She would not survive long without help. He pointed to the horizon. "We need water. There is a place, a deep hole in the rocks. We go there, fill flasks." Myra hesitated, then agreed. "I will come. The wreck is broken. Nothing here can save me." Together they left the ship behind. Ryan walked ahead, spear in hand, while Myra followed slowly. Her steps were heavy, but she did not complain. She kept her eyes on him, watching how he moved across the sand. After a long walk, they reached a rocky valley. In the center lay a pit where shadows cooled the air. Ryan climbed down first, then helped Myra follow. At the bottom was a pool of clear water, hidden from the burning sun. Myra knelt by the water and touched it with shaking hands. "You knew this was here?" she asked. "Yes," Ryan said. "I found it months ago. It kept me alive." She drank deeply, then looked at him. You survive with nothing but stone and bone. No machines, no weapons, no power. How? Ryan shrugged. I keep moving. I learn from what is left. The bones are strong. They cut, they break, they protect. Myra gave a faint smile. I thought humans were only dangerous with ships and armies. But you are dangerous even with bones. Ryan did not know if it was praise or warning, but he said nothing. He filled his flask and climbed out of the pit. As the sun set, they made camp in the valley. Ryan built a fire with dry wood, and Myra sat near the flames. She pulled a small device from her torn belt. It sparked weakly but then went dark. She sighed and tossed it aside. Your tools are broken, Ryan said. Yes, Myra admitted. The ship carried me across stars, but now it is nothing. Useless metal in the sand. She pointed at his spear. And yet your weapon works. Strange balance. Ryan looked at the spear. It is simple. Simple does not fail. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Myra leaned forward. Do you know where you walk, human? Ryan frowned. It is desert. Empty. She shook her head. No. This land is not empty. Long ago, it was a war ground. Beasts were bred to fight, massive creatures of bone and muscle. They died here. Their bones remain. Ryan stared at her, shocked. Beasts? For war? Yes, Myra said. Their skeletons are harder than steel. Your spear is not just bone. It is a weapon of the old war. You carry power without knowing it. The fire cracked between them. Ryan felt the weight of the spear in his hands. He thought of the predators he had killed, of how the weapon had not broken. Now he understood why. Myra saw the look in his eyes. Be careful, Ryan. If others learn you carry such weapons, they will hunt you. Ryan's face hardened. Let them come. That night, they slept near the fire. Ryan kept the spear close, his ears alert for danger. Myra slept lightly, waking often to check the shadows. Though they came from different worlds, both understood that survival meant never resting fully. When dawn came, the sound of engines cut the air. Ryan opened his eyes and looked to the sky. Small ships were flying low, their lights flashing in the early light. Myra's face turned pale. Scavengers, she whispered. They come for the wreck. Ryan tightened his grip on the spear. Who are they? Raiders, Myra said bitterly. They search for fallen ships, take what they want, and kill who stands in their way. If they see you, they will not spare you. Ryan stood tall. His voice was steady. Then we must be ready. By midday, the scavenger ships landed near the wreck. From the valley, Ryan and Myra watched. Strange figures stepped out, tall aliens with armor made of metal plates, their weapons glowing with energy. They laughed as they tore apart the wreck, searching for treasure. Myra clenched her fists. If they find me alive, they will take me. They hate my kind. Ryan's eyes were sharp. Then they will not find you. He checked his spear. The weapon looked small compared to the scavengers' machines, but he did not fear. He had faced hunger, thirst, and beasts. Now he would face raiders. As the sun lowered, the scavengers began to set up camp near the wreck. Ryan watched from the rocks above, Myra at his side. The firelight from their camp glowed across the sand. They will stay the night, Myra said. Tomorrow they will search the desert. If they find the valley, we are finished. Ryan nodded. Then we strike before they search. Myra stared at him, surprised. You would fight them? With one spear. Ryan's eyes burned with determination. It is enough. I do not hide. Myra was silent. In her heart she thought him foolish. Yet she remembered the beasts that had fallen before his bone spear. She remembered how he had faced the night without fear. And slowly, for the first time, she began to believe he might be right. The desert night grew colder, and the scavenger fires burned bright. Ryan sat sharpening the spear once more. Myra sat close, her eyes fixed on him. She whispered softly, "You are not like the others I have known. You are human." Ryan did not answer. He only raised the spear and looked toward the enemy camp. The bones of survival had given him his first weapon. Now the galaxy would learn what it meant when a human carried it. The desert night grew colder, sharper than knives against the skin. The scavenger camp burned with bright lights on the horizon, and the voices of raiders echoed faintly through the wind. Ryan and Myra sat hidden in the rocky valley, their fire no more than a faint ember to keep them from freezing. Ryan stared at the dim flame, his spear resting across his knees. "This fire is weak," he said. "It will not last the night." Myra nodded. "Your wood burns too fast. If you had true firestone, it would last longer and burn hotter. My people used it often on journeys." Ryan looked at her. "Firestone? What is that?" "Stones that fall from the sky," Myra explained. "They carry sparks inside. With them, you can make fire strong enough to burn wet wood, strong enough to melt metal." She hesitated, then added, "There were some in my ship's cargo. If the scavengers have not taken them, they may still lie in the wreck." Ryan's eyes narrowed as he thought. Stronger fire meant more than warmth. It meant safety, better tools, better weapons. Fire had changed everything once when he made it with dry wood and sparks. Now it could change even more. "We need them," he said firmly. "Without fire, we will be hunted like animals." Myra studied him, seeing the stubborn fire in his own eyes. "It is dangerous. The raiders search the wreck. If they see us, they will kill us." Ryan gripped his spear tighter. "Then we move like shadows. They will not see us." As the moon rose, Ryan and Myra crept across the desert toward the broken ship. They stayed low, moving between dunes and rocks, their footsteps silent on the sand. The raiders were loud, laughing around their fires, drinking from metal flasks. Their guards stood watch, but their eyes were lazy. Ryan and Myra reached the edge of the wreckage. The metal still smoked faintly from the crash. Myra pointed to a shattered crate half buried in the sand. "There," she whispered. The firestones were stored inside. Ryan moved first. He slipped through the wreck like a hunter, his spear ready. The crate was cracked open. Inside, glowing red stones pulsed faintly with heat, like the heart of the earth itself. He reached in and lifted one. The stone was warm in his hand, humming with hidden energy. Myra joined him, her face lit by the glow. "Yes," she said softly. "These will burn longer than any wood. With them, you can build a fire strong enough to survive storms." Before they could leave, voices rose nearby. Two raiders approached the wreck, their weapons flashing faint blue in the night. Ryan froze, pulling Myra into the shadows. The raiders stepped close to the crate. One kicked the sand angrily. "Empty. Someone took them already." The other grunted. "Then the desert will take them. Nothing survives here." They turned and walked back toward the camp. Ryan and Myra waited until their voices faded, then slipped away from the wreck, carrying the firestones wrapped in cloth. When they returned to the valley, Ryan built a circle of rocks and placed one firestone in the center. He struck it with bone and flint. Sparks leapt, then a sudden bright flame burst forth, hotter and stronger than any fire he had made before. The flames danced high, lighting the valley with fierce heat. Myra watched in awe. "Now you see," she said. "This fire can do more than cook food. With it, you can harden bone, make it sharper, stronger." Ryan's eyes lit with understanding. He held his spear near the fire until the bone glowed faintly, then cooled it in sand. The tip hardened, sharper than before. He tested it against a rock, and the stone cracked beneath the strike. A slow smile formed on his face. With this, we are no longer prey. The next day, Ryan used the fire to shape more weapons. He carved knives from smaller bones, hardening them in the flames. He made points for arrows, hooks for traps, and blades for cutting. Myra helped where she could, showing him how to bind bone with strips of hide, how to balance weight for throwing. Together, they worked in silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire. As they worked, Myra spoke quietly. "When I first saw you, I thought you were only a survivor clinging to life. Now I see you are more. You turned death into tools, bones into weapons. It is what made your people feared in the stars." Ryan paused. "You speak as if you know humans." "I know their history," Myra said. "Long ago, humans fought the galaxy. Empires rose against you, yet you survived. You lost worlds, yet you rebuilt. Many believed your kind had died when the great storms came. But now I see the truth. You cannot be erased. You rise again, even from bones." Ryan did not answer. He did not know if her words were praise or warning. But he felt the weight of them in his chest. That night, when the scavengers returned to search further, Ryan was ready. He waited in the shadows near the valley edge. When one raider wandered too close, Ryan struck. His bone blade, hardened by fire, slid between the plates of the raider's armor. The alien fell with a cry, silenced by the desert wind. Ryan dragged the body away and returned to Myra. She looked at him, her eyes wide. "You killed with bone and fire." Ryan's voice was calm. "Yes. And I will do it again if they come for us." The next morning, the valley smelled of smoke and blood. Ryan sharpened his weapons while Myra watched silently. She had once thought herself above such crude tools, trusting only machines and steel. But now she saw that the human beside her could fight with nothing but bones and flames, and still stand against the galaxy. The firestones burned bright, stronger than the sun, and the weapons of bone lay sharp at Ryan's side. He felt no fear of the raiders, no fear of the desert. For the first time, he felt more than survival. He felt ready for war. And Myra, though she would not admit it aloud, felt safer beside him than she had ever felt with ships or machines. The desert stretched endless, but now it no longer felt empty to Ryan. Every dune, every rock, every bone in the sand carried weight he had not seen before. The firestones gave him heat and light. The bone weapons he hardened in their flames cut sharper than steel. But more than that, Myra's words stayed in his mind. "These bones are not from simple beasts," she had said. "They are the remains of war creatures, bred by ancient hands." Ryan walked across the sands with his spear and thought of those words. The skeletons were everywhere, larger than mountains. Some rib cages rose higher than towers, some skulls lay half buried like hills. He had grown up thinking they were only the bones of strange animals that had once ruled the desert. Now he knew they were something else, shadows of a war so old even stories had forgotten it. That night, Ryan sat by the firestone flames and asked Myra to tell him more. "What war was this? Who made the beasts?" he said. Myra's eyes reflected the firelight. "It was before my people's time, before most empires you know today. There was a war across 1,000 systems. Armies clashed, worlds burned, and rulers sought new ways to destroy each other. So they made living weapons. Not machines, not soldiers of flesh alone, but creatures born for battle. They grew them in deep chambers, fed them metal and stone, until their bones became harder than any blade." Ryan listened in silence, the crackle of fire filling the air. "These creatures," Myra went on, "were unleashed on worlds. They trampled cities, tore apart fleets, crushed soldiers with claws and teeth. but war consumes its makers. The empires that created them fell. The beasts died, abandoned, their bodies left to rot where they had fought. This desert is one such place. You live on a graveyard of war. Ryan looked into the dark dunes, where the shapes of broken skeletons stretched across the land. He felt the weight of her words like a storm pressing on his chest. So the spear I hold is from a monster made for battle. Myra nodded. Yes. And that is why it does not break. Ryan turned the weapon in his hands. The bone gleamed in the firelight, sharp and unyielding. He thought of the predators he had killed, of the raider who had fallen beneath its tip. A chill passed through him, not of fear, but of power. Does the galaxy know? He asked. Myra shook her head. Most have forgotten. To them, this world is cursed, a wasteland no one wants. They fear the old bones, for they remind them of war they cannot control. So they leave it. Only scavengers come, greedy for scraps of metal. They do not understand what lies beneath their feet. Ryan felt something stir deep inside him. For years he had thought himself the last survivor of a dying world. Now he realized he stood on the remains of an empire's nightmare. And from those remains, he had made his first weapon. As the days passed, he hunted further into the desert, searching for larger bones. Myra followed, her strength slowly returning. Together they climbed over the skeletons of giants, through ribs big as houses and spines that rose like bridges. Ryan cut pieces free, carrying them back to the valley. With firestones and patience, he shaped them into new tools: shields from flat plates of bone, knives from curved claws, arrowheads from teeth as long as his arm. Each weapon carried the echo of the old war. And with each one, Ryan felt less like a lone survivor and more like a warrior. One evening, Myra stood beside him as he worked. She watched him grind the edge of a massive bone sword until it gleamed white. "You do not fear what you make," she said softly. Ryan looked at her. "Why should I fear? These bones are dead. They give me strength." "They give you more than strength," Myra said. "They carry memory. Power like this changes people. It can lift them higher, but it can also break them." Ryan's jaw tightened. "If I do nothing, I die. If I take these bones and fight, I live. That is all I know." Myra held his gaze for a long moment, then lowered her eyes. She could not argue with truth. The next day, they saw ships in the distance again. Not small scavenger crafts, but larger vessels with heavy wings and long shadows across the sand. Myra's face grew pale. "These are not simple raiders," she said. "They are war scavengers. They hunt for ancient weapons, for any trace of power left behind. If they see your bone blades, they will not stop until they have taken them and you." Ryan stood on the dune, the wind tearing at his hair, and watched the ships circle the wreck. He felt no fear. He felt fire in his chest. "Let them come. This desert has taken all from me. Now it gives me the bones to fight back. I will not give them away." That night, as the scavenger campfires glowed bright on the horizon, Myra spoke again. "Do you not see what this means, Ryan? You are the first human to raise these bones since the old war. The galaxy forgot your kind, thought you buried under storms and dust. But if you fight with these weapons, if you win, they will remember. They will fear again." Ryan's eyes shone in the firelight. "Then let them fear. I do not fight for glory. I fight because I must live. And if they learn my name, it will not matter. What matters is the fire, the bones, and the will to stand." The flames roared higher, shadows dancing across the valley walls. Myra looked at him, this human who had nothing yet made weapons from the dead, who had no army yet carried the strength of one. She realized then why humans had once shaken the stars. The desert wind howled, sweeping across the bones of long-dead beasts. And in that sound, it was as if the old war whispered once more, its shadows rising again through the hands of a lone survivor. The desert was never still for long. The wind carried sand across the land, shaping dunes into new forms each day. But now another sound filled the air, a deep rumble that did not belong to nature. Engines. Ryan stood on a high ridge with his bone spear in hand. The horizon shimmered in the heat, but he could see them clearly, 3 scavenger ships cutting across the sky, their shadows crawling across the sand. He knew at once they were returning for more. The smaller camp from before had only been the first. Now they came in greater numbers. Myra climbed the ridge beside him, her face tense. "They will not leave this time," she said. "They have seen the wreck, and they have smelled the bones. They know something lies here worth taking." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Then they will try to take it? And I will not let them." Myra looked at him, uncertain. "You speak as if one spear can stop an army." Ryan's voice was calm. "It has before." They went back to the valley, where Ryan had placed the firestones and the weapons he had shaped. Spears, blades, shields, and arrows lay ready, carved from the skeletons of giants. Ryan checked each one, running his hand along the edges, testing their strength. The bones held firm, sharp and unyielding. When the ships landed near the wreck, the scavengers poured out like ants from a nest. They were not the lazy raiders of before. These wore heavier armor, carried stronger weapons, and moved with purpose. Their leader, a tall alien with silver skin and black eyes, shouted commands. The group spread out, searching the dunes. From the shadows of the valley, Myra watched them nervously. "They will find us," she whispered. "There are too many." Ryan stood tall, his bone shield strapped to his arm, his spear in hand. His eyes burned with quiet fire. "Then we strike first." As night fell, the scavengers built a ring of fires around the wreck. They laughed and ate, their weapons stacked beside them. But their guards were watchful this time, eyes scanning the dunes. Ryan moved like a shadow through the dark, Myra close behind. They crept low, circling wide until they reached the far edge of the camp. Ryan lifted a bone knife and whispered, "Take their weapons first. Fire is their strength." Myra nodded, and together they crawled toward the pile of rifles and blades. The scavengers were loud, their voices drowning the faint sound of sand shifting. In a quick motion, Ryan grabbed 2 weapons and buried them in the sand. Myra did the same, moving fast, hiding as many as she could before a guard turned. The alien shouted, pointing. "There!" Movement. The camp erupted in noise. Scavengers grabbed for their weapons, only to find them gone. Confusion spread, and in that moment, Ryan rose from the sand with his spear high. He struck first, the tip piercing through armor into flesh. The scavenger fell with a cry. Myra hurled a bone blade, striking another in the shoulder. Panic spread through the camp. Some tried to grab weapons still left in the pile, but Ryan was faster. He smashed a shield into one raider's face, then cut another down with a hardened bone sword. The scavengers shouted in anger. "It is the human," one cried. "The survivor with the bone weapons." They rushed at him with knives and sticks, but their fear grew with every strike he made. The bones did not break. His fire-hardened weapons cut deeper than they expected. The human fought with a fury they had never seen, each movement precise, each strike deadly. Myra stayed close, her eyes sharp, guiding him with warnings. "Left, Ryan," she shouted as a raider lunged. Ryan spun and drove his spear into the attacker's chest. The campfires blazed, throwing light across the chaos. Scavengers fell one by one. Some tried to retreat to the ships, but Ryan hurled bone-tipped arrows after them, each shot flying true. At last, the leader stepped forward. He towered above the others, his armor thicker, his weapon a massive blade of glowing metal. His voice thundered. "You are nothing but dust, human. You fight with bones, while I carry the power of worlds. Ryan's grip tightened on his spear. He stepped forward, his voice steady. Then let the desert decide which is stronger. The leader charged, swinging the glowing blade. Sparks flew as it struck Ryan's shield, the impact nearly breaking his arm. But the shield held. Ryan pushed back, driving his spear at the leader's chest. The alien blocked with his blade, but the hardened bone cracked against the metal, holding firm. Back and forth they fought, the clash of bone and steel echoing across the desert. The scavengers stood frozen, watching in silence as their leader struggled against the lone human. Myra's eyes never left Ryan, her breath held with each strike. At last, Ryan found his opening. He ducked beneath a swing, stepped close, and drove his spear upward. The bone tip pierced through the leader's chest plate, striking deep. The alien gasped, his glowing blade falling from his hand. He staggered, then collapsed into the sand. The scavengers cried out in shock. Their leader was dead. Fear swept through them like fire through dry grass. Some ran for the ships, others fled into the night. None dared face the human again. Ryan stood over the fallen leader, chest heaving, his spear still buried in the alien's chest. He pulled it free, the bone gleaming in the firelight. Around him, silence fell. The scavenger camp was broken. Myra stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. You fought their leader with nothing but bone, she said softly. And you won. Ryan looked at her, his face calm though his body was tired. It was not the bone alone. It was the will to stand. They returned to the valley before dawn, carrying what they could from the fallen. The firestones still burned bright, and the weapons of bone lay sharp and ready. Ryan knew this was only the beginning. The scavengers would return again, with more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. But he no longer feared them. The bones of the old war had given him strength. His hands had shaped them into weapons. His heart had turned survival into victory. For the first time, Myra felt a spark of hope. She looked at Ryan and whispered to herself, the galaxy has forgotten what humans are. But soon, it will remember. The desert wind carried her words away, but Ryan did not need to hear them. He was already thinking of the battles to come. The desert was quiet after the battle, but Ryan knew peace would not last. The scavengers had fled, yet they would return with greater strength. He stood at the ridge above the valley, watching the horizon. His hand rested on the bone spear that had struck down their leader. The weapon felt heavy, not only with bone but with promise. Myra came beside him, carrying a bundle of cloth filled with food she had gathered. Her eyes studied him with care. You cannot fight them all alone, Ryan, she said. One man, even with the bones, cannot face an army. Ryan nodded. Then I will not fight alone. I will forge others as I have forged these weapons. Myra frowned. Others. There are no others here. The desert is empty. But Ryan's gaze turned north, where the mountains broke the horizon. The desert hides more than sand. I have seen shadows move in the distance. Not all who survive are scavengers. There are outcasts, wanderers, and broken tribes. They hide because they believe they are weak. But if we give them strength, if we give them the bones, they will rise. Myra's eyes widened. You mean to gather them? To build an army? Ryan turned to her, his face calm but firm. Not an army for conquest. An army to endure. An army that remembers what humans can be. The next days were filled with work. Ryan shaped more bone weapons, harder and sharper than before. He carved spears with longer reach, blades curved for cutting, and shields strong enough to stop scavenger fire. Myra learned quickly, her hands steady as she polished the edges and tested the balance. Together they filled the valley with weapons. But weapons alone could not win. They needed people. Ryan set out across the desert, moving with the sun at his back. He left signs in the sand, marks cut into stone, trails of bone spears standing upright like flags. Myra followed close, carrying water and guiding their way. Days passed until at last they found the first wanderers, a small band of survivors, thin and tired, hiding in caves near the mountains. The survivors shrank back when they saw Ryan. Their leader, an older man with a bent back, raised his hands. "We have nothing for you. Leave us." Ryan placed his spear in the ground and spoke firmly. "I have not come to take. I have come to give." The old man frowned. "Give? No one gives in this desert." Ryan stepped forward and showed them a blade of bone. Its surface gleamed white in the sun. "The scavengers will come again. They take from all who live here. But with these, you can stand." The survivors whispered to one another. Their eyes widened at the sight of the blade. One younger man reached out, touched its edge, and pulled back quickly with surprise at its sharpness. "Bone cannot be stronger than steel," the old man said, doubt in his voice. Ryan met his gaze. "It is not the bone alone. It is the fire that shapes it, and the hand that holds it." Slowly, the survivors agreed to follow him. They carried little, but in their eyes Ryan saw hunger for hope. Together they returned to the valley. One by one, more groups were found. Broken tribes hiding among the rocks. Families living in silence near old wrecks. Outcasts who had long ago given up fighting. To each, Ryan gave the same choice: remain hidden and wait for death, or take up the bones and fight for life. Many feared at first, but when they saw the weapons, when they heard of the battle where a human had slain the scavenger leader, their fear turned to wonder. Soon, dozens stood in the valley, men and women with eyes sharp and hands ready. Ryan trained them with patience. He showed them how to hold the spear, how to stand with the shield, how to strike without hesitation. Myra taught them how to shape the bones, to polish and strengthen them with fire. The valley became alive with sound shouts of training, the ring of blades, the crack of shields meeting in practice. At night, they gathered around the firestones. The light painted their faces as Ryan spoke. "The scavengers believe humans are broken. They believe we are dust, forgotten by the stars. But the desert has given us more. It has given us the bones of giants. From them, we carve strength. With them, we will remind the galaxy who we are." The people listened, their eyes glowing with new fire. For the first time, they believed they were more than survivors. They were becoming warriors. Still, Myra worried. One night, when the others slept, she sat with Ryan near the fire. "You are building more than weapons," she said softly. "You are building hope. But hope can break as easily as glass. What if they fall? What if you fall?" Ryan looked into the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "Then someone else will rise. Hope is not mine alone. Once lit, it spreads." Days turned to weeks, and the valley transformed. Where once there had been silence, now there was strength. Warriors drilled in the sand, their bone weapons flashing in the sun. Children shaped smaller blades. Elders shared stories and kept watch. Then came the scouts. Survivors who had climbed the dunes returned with warnings. The scavengers were gathering again. Not 3 ships this time, but more, an entire fleet. They would descend soon, searching for revenge and plunder. The news spread through the camp like wind through dry grass. Fear touched many, but when they looked at Ryan, standing with his spear high, their fear lessened. He called them together beneath the stars. "The scavengers believe we will run. They believe we will break. But we have forged more than weapons here. We have forged a people. When they come, we will not hide. We will meet them in the open desert, and we will show them the bones of survival." The crowd raised their weapons high, voices crying out as one. The desert echoed with their roar. Myra stood at his side, her heart racing. She had once feared the desert and the scavengers, but now she saw something new. She saw a human army, born not from conquest but from the will to endure. She looked at Ryan, and in her heart she knew, he was no longer only a survivor. He was a leader. The horizon was still dark, but dawn was coming. And with it, war. The desert wind carried a strange sound. It was not the soft whistle of sand shifting or the call of a night bird. It was a deep hum, growing louder with every heartbeat. Ryan stood at the highest ridge of the valley, his hand tight on his bone spear. Behind him, the new army waited in silence. Men, women, and even youth stood ready, their faces painted with dust, their weapons gleaming white in the rising sun. The scavengers were coming. Far across the horizon, dark shapes appeared. First only dots, then growing larger ships with long wings of iron and engines that burned the sky. Dozens of them. The ground trembled as they descended, their shadows spreading across the desert floor. Myra stood at Ryan's side. Her hands held a bone blade she had carved herself. She looked at the fleet and whispered, "They are many." Ryan nodded, his voice steady. "But we are ready. Today, we do not hide. Today, we show them what humans have become." He raised his spear high, and the army lifted their weapons with him. The desert rang with their voices. The scavenger fleet answered with thunder as ships landed, scattering dust and fire. From the open bays poured armored figures, hundreds, then thousands. They marched forward, their weapons glowing with alien light. The scavenger leader, taller than the rest, stepped ahead. His armor shone black in the sun. He raised a clawed hand and shouted in a tongue of harsh sounds. His soldiers roared back. Ryan took one step forward. He planted his spear in the ground and called out with a voice that carried across the desert. "This land is ours. These bones are ours. Leave, or face the strength of humans." The scavenger leader laughed, a sound like metal grinding. He gave the signal. The alien soldiers surged forward. The battle began. The desert shook as two forces met. The scavengers fired beams of red light, but the new shields of bone held strong. Sparks flew as weapons clashed. Human spears struck with deadly force, bone blades cut through armor, and scavenger cries filled the air. Ryan fought at the front. His spear struck fast, breaking enemy lines. He moved like a storm, each step sure, each strike true. Beside him, Myra fought with fearless fire, her blade flashing. Around them, the humans stood shoulder to shoulder, not breaking, not running. The scavengers were stronger, but they were not prepared for this. They had expected weak prey, not warriors. They had thought humans would fall quickly, but the bone weapons pierced even their hardest armor. Still, the enemy was many. Waves kept coming. For every scavenger that fell, another pressed forward. The humans were pushed back step by step, their arms heavy, their breaths sharp. Fear began to creep again. Ryan saw it. He felt the weight too, but he would not let it break them. He lifted his spear high, shouting, "Hold the line. Remember the bones. Remember who we are." His voice cut through the noise of battle. The warriors roared back, their strength renewed. They pushed forward once more, striking hard, driving the scavengers back across the sand. Then the sky darkened again. More ships. More scavengers. The leader had not sent all his strength at once. He had waited. Now, a second wave descended, larger than the first. Myra's eyes widened. There are too many. We cannot stand forever. Ryan's face was calm, though his chest burned with exhaustion. We do not need forever. We need only to show them that humans cannot be broken. The scavenger leader advanced again, this time joining the fight himself. His claws were sharp, his weapons strong. He cut through shields and knocked warriors aside. None could stop him. He moved toward Ryan, his black armor shining. The battlefield seemed to pause. Both sides watched as the two leaders faced one another. Ryan tightened his grip on the spear. "You believe us weak," he said, his voice steady. "But weakness does not survive the desert. Only strength does. Only humans do." The scavenger leader roared and charged. Their weapons clashed with thunder. The leader struck hard, his claw tearing through Ryan's shield. But Ryan did not fall. He struck back, his spear flashing in the sun. They circled, sand rising around them, every blow shaking the ground. The leader lunged, driving his weapon toward Ryan's chest. Ryan twisted aside and struck with all his strength. His bone spear pierced the scavenger's armor, driving deep. The leader staggered, his roar turning to a gurgle. With one last push, Ryan drove the spear through, and the great enemy fell into the sand. For a moment, silence filled the battlefield. Then a great cry rose from the humans. Hope blazed like fire. But the battle was not yet done. The scavengers still outnumbered them, and though their leader had fallen, they fought on. Yet something had changed. The aliens wavered, their lines breaking. They had come expecting an easy victory, but now they faced humans who fought like giants. Myra raised her blade and cried, "For Ryan! For the bones!" The army surged forward once more. The scavengers faltered. Some fled back toward their ships. Others dropped their weapons, fear in their eyes. The desert belonged to the humans. At last, the remaining scavengers retreated, their ships lifting into the sky. The hum of engines faded, leaving only the sound of wind and the breathing of the weary warriors. The sand was marked with the struggle, but the humans still stood. Ryan stood too, his chest heaving, his spear broken but still in his hand. He looked at the horizon, where the last of the scavenger fleet vanished. Myra came beside him, blood on her arm but fire in her eyes. "They will return," she said quietly. "Yes," Ryan answered. "But so will we. And next time, we will be stronger." The army gathered around him. Men and women who had once been wanderers, outcasts, and hidden survivors now stood tall as warriors. They looked at Ryan not only as a fighter but as a leader. He raised the broken spear high. "This is not the end. This is the beginning." Today, the desert saw the first weapons. Tomorrow, the galaxy will see the strength of humans. The crowd roared, their voices rising into the endless sky. And so the bones of survival became more than weapons. They became the foundation of a new people, a new future, and a promise that humans, though forgotten by the stars, would rise again.